Good morning. I would like all of you to imagine a young adult. She is stepping out into the adult world for the first time. She is surrounded by new beliefs, new expectations, and new pressures. And all of this independence is so new to her. It's so scary. And right now, as an adult, she has to make major life decisions without people to guide her and without people to show her what to do. In that moment, what these young adults fall back on matters. It is truly significant. Young adults who lack strong and stable family connections often feel lost, uncertain, and unprepared for the. However, those who do come from stable and strong families have direction, and they have purpose. So, what shapes a young adult, and what prepares them for life? Well, the answer is strong families, and families particularly rooted in the church and in the Trinity. This provides the foundation for stable, confident, and strong-minded individuals. Families are the building block of society, and they always have. But as time continues, as we grow, families are being pulled apart. Families can either be disengaged with one another or enmeshed. Disengagement can be correlated with work outside of the home, as both parents often take jobs, the advances of technology, and along with social media. And something even as simple as dinner has changed into a time of distraction rather than connection. Events like COVID-19 increased isolation between family members and increased disengagement. While many people argue that COVID brought many people together because we were all in the same household, it really bred emotionally distant and disengaged people, disengaged family members. Families can be physically together. They can be in the same room, but they can still lack unity. They can still lack connection. In the same way, family members can also be enmeshed with one another. And this is the opposite of disengagement. This is when members are dependent on one another. There's no distinction. There's no uniqueness involved. They're one, but not in a good way. And neither disengaged or enmeshed families rightfully represent the Trinity. Healthy families are meant to be connected to one another while allowing growth, while allowing growth in unique roles. Now, why is this important? Why am I talking about this? Well, this is important because I truly believe that families shape everything and everyone. Families shape people's identities, their emotional stability, and their relationship patterns. Research constantly shows us that healthy families produce emotionally stable children, whereas unhealthy families produce children who struggle long-term into their adulthood. And the family influences a child's normal, how they perceive the world. And this can be positive or negative. And as children grow into young adults, as they flourish in independence, life is overwhelming. They have to make decisions on college, their career, and their relationship. And without a strong foundation in the family, many struggle with their identity, who they are and what they believe, their mental health, how they deal with the problems of the adult world, and how they make decisions. It is so easy. It is so easy to become lost when there's not someone there to guide you, when there's not someone there to show you what to do. We also see that families affect the next generation. Children who are raised in unhealthy environments often seek similar relationships. For example, if a child is raised in an abusive home, they are more likely to form future relationships that also show abusive tendencies. And while this is not always done without realizing it, we as people, we see familiar as safe. And even if these children from families don't repeat the same behaviors as their families did or their parents did, they're still significantly shaped by those experiences. So what is a strong, healthy family? What makes it function? Well, according According to Ball's work, a strong family, by contrast, has a degree of mutuality and involvement that is supportive and not intrusive. In the family, a healthy family, there is no control or independence, but interdependence. Just as the Trinity exists in perfect unity, while remaining distinct in role, Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, so are we. Family members are meant to support one another, while still allowing individual growth and individual responsibilities. This means a healthy family should be supportive, but not controlling. Connected without losing individuality, without losing those unique and beautiful roles. And they are built on sincere and genuine care for one another. When each member contributes something unique to the family, they work together in unity. This is interdependence. And children learn to be responsible, to have emotional stability, and are able to live in healthy relationships with the people around them. Now, I keep saying strong-minded. What do I mean by strong-minded? Well, I mean to think clearly, to remain steadfast in your beliefs, even when people are telling you what to do, even when people are telling you different beliefs. Because in the adult world, we are faced with many different beliefs, many different peoples, contrary to what the Bible tells us. So being able to stand strong and be strong-minded is important. But unfortunately, many families aren't able to become healthy because they don't have a model. They don't have something to base it off of. And that model is the church. And the church is a physical representation and it is an extension of what the Trinity is. When the church is present in the family, it teaches accountability, sacrificial love, and humility. But when we don't have these values, when we don't have church in the family, roles become unclear between the husband, the wife, and the children because there's no one to base it off. And the church is that basis. Pride increases because there's no one to take correction from, and conflicts worsen because of that. This leads to emotional distance, toxic relationships, and in some cases, even abuse. When there's no church, there's no structure, and there's no direction. People get lost fast. When families are rooted in the church and the Trinity, something changes, something deeper. They reflect interdependence. This means that they have unity. They have one purpose. They have one goal. They're on the same team, but they're different. Not one person in the family is the same as the other. They have unique roles, and they have unique giftings. This creates strong communication, emotional support, and accountability between members, just like the church does. And we also see that it teaches what real love looks like, because we see that in the Bible, in Jesus' death for us. When children are raised in these environments, when they are raised in families that are modeled off the church, they develop stronger relationships, better emotional stability, clearer identity, and greater resilience. They learn to be responsible instead of blame other people. They learn to be committed instead of avoiding problems. And they learn to have unity instead of division. This is also truly important in marriages. This affects both the current and future families. In current families, it helps with emotional security, trust, and stability, and prepares for commitment and conflict resolution. This also provides a healthy environment for children to grow and to learn. Marriage, when the church is present, becomes a unified relationship. They work together for the same purpose, but they are also distinct. Genesis 2:24. Therefore, a man will leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And additionally, when the church is present, it also affects future marriages. It affects your children's marriages. When they observe healthy marriages every day, they will have the benefits of it. A healthy marriage in the church teaches humility and it teaches sacrifice. These shape the child's understanding of what love is, of what commitment is, what unity is, and what responsibility is. And ultimately leads to better communication, better conflict resolution, better sacrifice, better respect between husband and wife. And this doesn't just affect the first generation. The church doesn't just affect the first generation, but it affects generations to come, future generations. Because strong families create strong individuals. And strong individuals breed a stronger society. Now, what about unhealthy churches? Yes, it's a fair concern. Not every church is going to represent the Trinity. And this is not a model of that Trinity, but it is a model of the people within that body. Ephesians 4:15 through 16 says, "Speaking the truth in love, we are to grow in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. When each part is working properly, it makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love." A healthy church is meant to do this. It is meant to support its members. It is meant to guide and encourage growth. And when they do not do this, they do not represent the Trinity well, and they are not a healthy church. Each member in the church is supposed to be a small part in the bigger picture. And that bigger picture is bringing others to Christ and glorifying God. We also know that not every person who comes from a healthy family that is modeled off of the church and the Trinity will be a strong-minded individual. And the church and the family cannot determine this. They cannot force a child to want to be strong-minded. But it is super important that they provide the foundation to allow this to happen. Matthew 13:23. As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30. The good soil in this parable is the family environment. Family environment modeled off of the church. Family environment modeled off of the family. And the fruit is the product. The product we see in our children. The product to be strong, to think clearly. Now let's go back to that young adult, stepping into the world for the first time. Why do some stand confident, while others feel lost and scared? Well, this is not something that was formed overnight. It is not something that is formed within a couple of days or a couple of weeks. It is through years of formation with the presence of the church. This happens through intentional love, consistent effort, a clear foundation that we see in the church and the Trinity, and ultimately a love of the Lord. When families are rooted in the principles modeled off the church, they produce individuals who are prepared to stand firm in their beliefs, regardless of what everyone else around them is telling them, regardless of what others believe. The responsibility to rebuild the foundation starts with us. We need to prioritize the church's role in the family. We need to build young adults who love their families, their churches, and their God.
I can first, great job. I was just so encouraged as a pastor, as a father, as a husband, reading this, and just being reminded of God's plan for the family, and even His grace when we make mistakes and don't do it as well as we should. So, really grateful for your time in research. Is great. I'm curious. At one point, I think early on in your paper, you mentioned that some of the negative effects in children who don't come from a healthy family are lasting and sometimes even permanent. So what kind of encouragement might you give to a Christian who did not come from a healthy family and maybe is looking at this research and feeling like, am I just, up a creek? Do I have any, what can I do in order to negate some of those negative effects and move towards health if I didn't come from a home like that?
Yeah, I think this is super important in the church's role because, like I was saying, the church is a physical representation of the Trinity and is an extension of the family. So those who don't come from healthy families per se, they can look to the church for their family. They can have that community within that church body.
Yeah, similarly, I was very encouraged by reading this, and I think that if more people understand what you have tapped into here, the next generation will lead a much healthier world than the one you're being handed. So good job on this very important topic and well handled. And specifically, two things I wanted to bring up that stood out to me in your paper. One was, I think you managed your Trinitarian analogy very well because you didn't press it too far. You threaded the needle. It wasn't like, so the Father represents God the Father, and kids represent, you didn't go there. And that's not easy to do what you just did, to draw an analogy and then stop at the appropriate time before you push it further than the Bible does. So really well done on that. And kind of a smaller point, I just thought the Bible verses that you selected were perfectly placed, and when I read that, it was like, oh, yes, there is no other way to say that better than to put Hebrews 10, 24, 25 right there. So I was just like high-fiving you as I was reading your paper.
Yeah, thank
Good
you.
use of scripture. I want to talk about, I want you to talk about the image of God specifically, as the church being modeled on the Trinity, the family being modeled on the Trinity. You handle this a different way than I typically hear. Normally, the order that's laid out is there's the essence of God as he actually is, and then there's the family, and then the church is modeled on the family. You seem to have flipped that around and said that the family is modeled on the church. And so now it's okay to critique a majority opinion, right? There's no like right or wrong answer here. I just want to get you talking about which way that causal arrow points. Is the church modeled on the family? Is the family modeled on the church? Is it both? What's what is the biblical way of talking about these things?
Well, hopefully I answer your question correctly. But the Trinity is it is the basis for what all of our relationships should be based off of, because the Trinity, all members exist in perfect relation, in perfect unity with one another. So when I was researching, I really just wanted to talk about why families were important. But as I continued to research, I learned that the church's role in the family is super important because it is a role model. It shows how families should act. So I think the church is supposed to represent the Trinity, and in that way, the family is supposed to follow that. If that answers your question correctly, yeah.
I too had the same thoughts regarding your thesis. I just thought you did an excellent job bringing in the Trinity, the church, Christ's love and sacrificial service, and just the generational aspect of all of it and how it affects. I can see it as a grandfather and just see the generational aspects of the whole thing and how it all fits together. So I loved it. I thought it was very encouraging, modeling humility and Christ, modeling humility and all of that excellent stuff. So thank you for your thesis. It's great.
Thank you.
So as Christians, we know that there's the enemy is constantly out there trying to attack, and through that we know that he will work to thwart our efforts to live for God's glory. And so what I am curious about is if you came across in your research things that would indicate that ways of dealing with that through what it is that you were getting across.
Yeah, I didn't come across that specifically, but I do think your question is how we deal with opposing beliefs in the devil.
Yeah.
Well, I think ultimately we need to, I think the family is super important for this because it provides the foundation. It is what you stand on. And I think as someone who is going into their adult life, as someone who is, already taking college level classes and surrounded by people who do not believe the same things I believe, that role and that relationship with your family is super important, because I think it's really special that I get to, talk to my family, and I get to be like, hey, Dad, what do you think about this, So, sorry. I think having that relationship with your family, having that connection allows direction, and, it helps people spot out where there is lies, where people are telling you false things. So.
We all know you have great parents, Eve. I'm curious, in your paper you mentioned that there are healthy habits that parents can establish within the home. I think every Christian parent wants to have a healthy home, but can you speak to practical things that parents can do, maybe things that you experience in your home, just being raised, where parents can actually make steps to create that environment that you're advocating for?
Yeah, I think I was always taught we're all on the same team, we're all working together, especially when we were fighting or anything. But I think to have that relationship, to create children who are strong-minded, I think the family should prioritize community. This could be simple as, all sitting down for dinner, or watching a movie, or just being there for other people, and trying to get rid of isolation and disengagement between family members, because presently it is so easy to do that with everything like technology and social media. Individual comfort has been prioritized over communal comfort, over the comfort of the family. So I think really prioritizing that would be good.
This is more of a comment. You had a line in your paper which I loved. You said, families don't need to have deep research and complex answers to know how to grow. You just spend time together and love each other. That's really good.
To piggyback on the structure thing, you said something on page 1, right out of the gate here, which I think you've touched on something very important, so I want to get you to explain a little bit more about it.
Okay.
You said after World War II, close to the bottom of page 1, after World War II, women all around the United States joined the workforce, a place that was originally man's territory. So in regards to womanhood and femininity, I'm wondering if you can describe, in your view, the ideal place of a woman in the economy, right? We've got the Proverbs 31 woman who's very much participating in the economy, and yet she's at home with her family, right? So how do you see that working out in the most healthy way?
Yeah. So the Bible constantly tells us that the wife is supposed to support and to nurture the family. And it can be difficult nowadays with, how everything is priced and just economics. Women are, called to. Women are called to be, just as important in the workforce as men. I personally believe that women should, stay home. But in regards to today, I do think that they need, whether they go to work or they stay home, they need to still be that important part of the family. They still need to support her husband and her children and be that guiding role in the family. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And just to bring something out here that I think is a real strength of how you're approaching this is you're making a good separation between well, you're making a good distinction between ideals and realities, right? Some realities are difficult, and the ideal may not perfectly apply here. And so you're saying, here's what I think ought to happen, and and here's how that might apply in suboptimal circumstances. So that's a really good line of thinking, and I just want to bring that out so that you can, know that that's a strength of yours and take that into the world with you.
Thank you.
Did you come up with anything in your research that, I know you're supposed to probably figure out how to refute your own argument. Did you come up with any good ways or thoughtful ways that somebody could do that?
Refute my argument?
Refute your argument, yes.
Like how people, can argue against my argument? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I can give you an example. So if you have somebody who says, well, I know people who are non-Christians who have been married for 50 years and have a strong marriage. They've raised great kids. Their kids are married. They're raising great grandkids, and everything looks like it's going well.
Yeah.
So, how would you answer that person?
Well, the cool thing about the Trinity is that, as I was saying, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit exist in perfect relationship with one another. And we are called, not just as Christians, but to model that. We are called to base our relationships off of the Trinity. So when you see a family that is not Christian or does not have the church in their life, we can correlate and link that to what we see in the Trinity. And most likely it is the ability to be is united and distinct. So.
Maybe going on that as well, I wonder how you might respond to somebody who, they read your argument specifically advocating for what I also believe to be a biblical idea of headship and submission between a husband and a wife. How essential would you say, Eve, that idea of biblical headship and submission is in the home to what you're advocating for?
Could you ask that one more time?
Yeah, so there might be Christians who hold a more of an egalitarian perspective that, everybody in the family, especially the husband and wife, there's not one who has authority over another. They might even use a Trinitarian argument and say that there's a mutual submission. So as you're, I guess, presenting the concept of a healthy Christian home, how essential is that idea of the husband being the head and then the wife being the one who submits? How essential is that piece of it to a healthy Christian home? Or could you have it without that?
Yeah, I do think that is a really important part because we see that in Scripture that God is the groom and the church is his bride, and there's headship in that illustration or model. So having that headship is important because the husband is supposed to guide the family. The husband is supposed to lead. And when you do not have that leadership, oftentimes there is loss of roles and the family can become lost. The woman, it is an important part of leading the family as well, but the husband is essential for that.
If you can articulate that for the rest of your life in the world, you might say, yeah, your generation bringing in a solid, well thought out complementarian theology to the home is going to be the foundation of anything good that God does in the culture from here on out. So let me shift gears a little bit. You made a comment that during the COVID lockdowns, everybody was together, and yet somehow something happened that to me seems counterintuitive, which is people wound up being more isolated. And you make the comment that, as Aaron cited, that, time together is essential. Well, people had time together, and yet somehow they wound up being isolated. What do you think happened there? What went wrong?
Yeah, that's a good thought. Honestly, I don't really know. I would guess that I know that social media and technology played a big role in COVID, and I think people were looking for an outlet. They were looking for connection, and when they did that, like through gaming or social media, whatever it was, they lost that connection with their family. They lost that community with their family because they were looking for something different.
So when you say time together, you don't necessarily just mean proximity.
No, I mean a care, like a desire to want to be with them, a desire to want to grow and to have community, along with, being physically in the same room.
Yeah. Okay, so could you maybe give a succinct definition of what you mean by quality family time together? What would that look like in an ideal setting?
I think, like I was saying, maybe just, spending time around the dinner table, asking about one another's lives, being able to connect and being able to just, talk and, be like, how was your day? Or what did you learn at school? Or something like that. And, it doesn't even have to be in your household. It could be anywhere. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you think education plays into this with regard to your argument, either on a positive way or a negative way?
Along with independence as an adult, being strong-minded. Yeah. I didn't cover that super well in my paper. I didn't really research that, but I do think education is an important part. But I believe I touch on how the family is a community where children can learn and where children grow. So I do think education does matter, but the family's role and how they teach the child is stronger than what school they go to.
I should back up. I was really happy that you're presenting this really strong case, and somebody could read it and think like, oh, this is a foolproof model for producing Christian, healthy, mature children. But you're careful to caveat that and say, and even in this speech, it's not a guarantee. So what encouragement, Eve, would you give to parents maybe who have children who are a little bit older, maybe in high school, and they feel like we've been trying to do all of these things, but our children, it doesn't seem like it's working?
Yeah, the church and the family cannot determine this in a child. They cannot, they cannot force a child to, love the Lord and be strong-minded. And ultimately, it just comes down to the Lord. It comes down to his decision in that child's life. But just families and parents can be encouraged knowing that, God has a plan, God has a purpose, even when we don't think that it's for the right reason, even when we don't believe that that's the right path. We are limited beings, and we don't know a whole lot, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eve. Thank you.